My name is Monica Gleberman, and you're listening to Silence on Set podcast. On today's podcast, we have Elizabeth Mitchell, who will be returning for season 3 of Outer Banks, which is a show about a teenager who enlists his 3 best friends to hunt for a legendary treasure linked to his father's disappearance. Elizabeth Mitchell is an Emmy nominee who has starred in shows like Lost, Revolution, Once Upon a Time, Crossing Lines, and of course the blockbuster hit The Purge election year. So to talk all about her films, television shows, and what we can expect for this upcoming season of Outer Banks, here's Elizabeth Mitchell. Well, I want to start off just really quickly because you've had, if I was to list out every single thing you did, we would be here all day. What is your earliest memory of kind of being on set and getting a job and going, oh my gosh, what do I do? There's cameras, there's people.
Yeah, I had done about 15 years of theater before I was on set. So I think it was just extreme disbelief because, it always just felt like something that other people did, like people that weren't regular old people like me, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it didn't seem like something that was attainable, if that makes any sense. So I think the first time I was there, I think I sat in my dressing room and I remember sitting in there going I'm really here. I'm really part of this group and I'm really going to go do this. I think from the second, the lights are on and the camera is there, it just felt like such a place you can be free in, I guess. It's such a concentrated bit of time, which is perfect for me because then I can go back to my little hole and read books and be really quiet and all those things. So I just remember being incredibly delighted. Of course, I was nervous. And of course, I had that feeling of wanting to please, right? You want to make sure that you're making the people who hired you happy. And that's left me as the years have gone on, because now I am in service to my character and I will be as respectful as I possibly can always, because I think that's part of our job. My real service is to the character and kind of pleasing them, right? Pleasing the work, pleasing the art of it. And that's been a nice shift as I've gotten older and become less of a people pleaser, but still tried to be as kind as possible.
Yeah. Well, it's hard. You pick up on a great, topic that I think comes up a lot when I interview actors, especially women, is that you feel uncomfortable because you feel like you can't say anything. So you do want to please everybody. And then I think as you get older and a little wiser, then you go, well, it's okay if I say something.
It's so nice. And what I didn't expect, especially in my 50s, was the respect that just came with being older. And I think it's been so nice because, you don't feel older. That's the really interesting thing that I feel like we just don't understand. But my grandmother explained it to me. She's like, you don't feel any older, but you know you're older. You know a little bit more, right? But you don't really feel older. So to get automatic respect from people simply because of my age and how long I've been in the business is always hilarious to me. It tickles me just a little bit to have these young, adorable, unbelievably talented kids be like, oh, yes, Miss Elizabeth, that seems like a great idea. We should do that. Thank you so much for mentioning that. I'm like, oh, the power.
Look what I've gained over time. That's so great. So of course that leads me into one of the biggest shows known to man. I'm sure you know where I'm going, but Lost.
Love it. I love Lost.
Oh
I am
my
so
gosh.
grateful for Lost.
Now, I don't know if people remember. So I'm 36. So I remember when that came out. And when I was in college, we were watching it week to week and we were all fighting. It was so every episode would end and we were all arguing over what did it mean. So what was it like working on that show? Because I don't know how much you knew as to what was going on and
oh gosh, not
but
much.
what was that like? Because I can't imagine working on the show, let alone all of us that were arguing all the time.
Totally agree. That's a great question. I love Lost. I am grateful, but I also am just aware of what an extraordinary experience it was. And I think I always was. And I always say the best thing that happened to me is I just had my son. I was feeding him. So I was exhausted, right? He was up all night long. I would come to work in the morning and I firmly believe it's probably why I got the part and why I was able to concentrate, because I think otherwise how big it was and how important it was would have registered really heavily for me and I probably would have been nervous. As it was, I was a sleep deprived mom who was loving her work, but not giving the rest of the world a whole lot of thought, if that makes any sense. There was not a pleasing bone in my body. I was like, let's get this done. Come on, guys. Let's do it. I'm ready. I think that helps. And as far as the mystery of it, I loved it. I met and sat down with Damon, the creator, and all the guys, Carlton, and I talked about my life and myself, and they told me things here and there. And what I loved about that writer's room is just how excited they were and how well thought out this trajectory was, and their love of archetypes and how they genuinely loved these stories and how committed they were. And it was another one of those shows that it's word perfect. They like the words that they write and they want you to say them, right? Some of them, they're like, improv, do whatever you want. But I actually think that's one of the things that made it so good is every single word that came out of our mouths, they really cared about, right? So it was like doing a play in a way. And I loved the mystery of it. It's a little easier when you get to read it. Not as much as left up to what could be, because it's there on the page, and we not only have our words, we have our set description, we have a what's happening around us, we have a how we're feeling, we have all those things. So I feel like when people were questioning this or what is this or what could this be, it was sometimes a little easier to see it on the page and kind of think, oh yeah, it's this. I mean, like the smoke monster, I had an idea of what it was and I just went with that and think that I was kind of right. So that was the fun of it, was that idea of it is a mystery, but these characters don't know what's happening either. So they're encountering all of this with kind of a beginner's mind. And I really thought that was fun. Like I loved it. I had the best
My
time.
gosh. And I felt like, the characters not knowing, I think was the
Yeah.
critical key because it
Critical.
made the audience feel like we related, right? Because we don't know what's
Yes.
going on. You guys don't know what's going on, but caused so much conversation and so much kind of like arguing. And it's
Yeah.
rare for a show. And, people now I think might go,
Yeah.
oh, this happens all the time. It didn't happen
Yeah.
back then.
That's right. That's exactly it. And they did such a beautiful job of building that, of world building. I love sci-fi and fantasy and it's all about world building. And they did such an incredibly beautiful job of that world building. Like you bought into the world you were in. And I think that's why we all loved it and got so obsessed with it. I still have people talk to me about the ending.
Do you have a favorite memory from Lost from those days?
Evangeline is one of my favorite people. And I remember our episode we did when we were handcuffed and running through the jungle together. And you have to know, that's an hour of an episode. But for us, that was a week and a half of running through the jungle together. And we just bonded. I don't know how else to put it, except that it was absolutely stunning how easily and joyfully our friendship kind of evolved. And so I've always been really grateful for that on a personal level. And I enjoyed all the little funny moments. When Juliet flips Kate, like I wanted to do that. Like there's like eating ice cream in bed for the sex scene during the more Juliet centric episode in season 3. Like I wanted to do that because I wanted to be there, have there be more of a female approach to these things. I wanted to always feel like she needed to kind of be in charge. And I like that they let us do all of that. And some things I just laugh. Walking down the stairs and taking a sip from another actor's coffee and just the look on their face. I don't know, like dumb things, like dumb little worlds. But I think that what really always just comes back to me is those times all of us being together and Terry playing guitar and Josh singing and I would sing and we would all just be together. No one was on their phones, right? So it was just these real times of camaraderie and then super hard work. I mean, half the time you're just working on your scenes because it comes fast and furious. So I loved it. It was a golden time. Big Hawaiian moon.
But you were so good in that show, and obviously
Thank
you've done a ton in between. You did Revolution, you did
you.
other stuff. Of course, the next.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, these were all big, so it was very hard to pick out certain ones. But
Oh,
Once Upon a Time for you,
yeah.
what was your experience? On Once Upon a Time.
I mean, I remember when they asked me to come and do that, I was on a road trip with my son and we were listening to Frozen and we were singing all the parts and like everything. And I remember them saying that it was a possibility. And I thought, gosh, like, what is it going to be like to play this character with these powers, with this huge vulnerability, which makes her do terrible things, right? And the dresses. I remember the first time I tried on the dress. I remember one of the first nights we were shooting on a street corner and it was cold and there were spotlights set up and I was wearing that white dress, with everything. And there's some paparazzi across the street and they were taking pictures. And I remember looking at them later that night and I sent one to my mom because for the first time in my career, I actually kind of felt like a princess. Like, oh, this is amazing. So I think to be in a fairy tale was a childhood dream and it was extraordinary. And it came in great response to my mom asking thinking if I could just be pretty in something.
But I guess less
Oh,
dirty from Lost.
yeah, I think that
Out
she
of the
just
jungle.
wanted a little bit of glamour, and so did my grandma, and I think it made her very happy. I think they could have done without the cleavage, but I think that other than that, they were great.
Yeah. No, I agree. The outfits
Yeah,
were fantastic. Speaking of that, were you able to steal
same.
anything?
No, nothing. The
Oh,
only thing I have, oh, hold on. I have one thing. Isn't that amazing? So it's like the clock tower and everything. I know. So, love
oh,
that.
that brings back so many like good memories for me, like
I
nostalgic
know.
memories.
So I keep that and it's top, right? So it wasn't meant to be there forever, you know, but at the same time, it was such a beautiful gift and I was so grateful for it. And it is my memory of standing on that street.
It was such a good show. It was so beautiful. You were so great in that show. I hope you made your mom and your grandmother proud because you were gorgeous. So
Oh,
there was
thank you.
nothing wrong with how you looked there.
Nothing like 2 hours of makeup and couture, right?
And it was probably a lot nicer, I would assume. I mean, it has its challenges, but it was probably a lot nicer than being in the forest, running in dirt, wearing same outfits over and over and
I mean,
stuff
you
like
know,
that.
I was barefoot because I said to them, I'm like, why would she wear shoes? She's impervious to the cold. Like, it doesn't make any sense that she would wear shoes. And so, but then it's winter, right? In Canada, and I'm barefoot. So that was, that was a choice that I
You're so funny. Like, I love all this like background stuff, and I think people are gonna freak out because these are just like iconic,
made.
classic
So,
moments in like television, and it's just crazy. And then
so
another
fun.
one I have to bring up, obviously, is
Yeah.
The Purge because was very different for you because
Yeah.
going TV show after TV show after TV show. You had
Yeah.
made appearances on like and I'm going out of order, but like you were on like The
No,
Good
do it.
Doctor, and you had all these different appearances. But
Yeah.
Purge election year was
Yeah.
a different genre. What made you decide to participate in that? Were there any connections that you felt related to The Purge?
So I did not look at The Purge for a long time when they sent me the script. And it was just to, kind of look at it. And the reason is that I don't tend to watch terribly dark things because they resonate with me. Like I'm one of those people who, cry at commercials. Like I'm just one of those, I'm a soft touch, right? So I didn't look at it at first because I thought, well, that's not going to be for me. I don't want to do although I knew they were amazing and people absolutely loved them and were, and my sister, like huge fan, like her favorite thing, my best friend, Wendy, same thing. But then I'm just sitting there and I'm like, Liz, it's very disrespectful not to read a script. And I'm like, hopefully it won't be so scarring that it keeps me up at night. And what I found was just an incredible adventure, right? It was like an action movie for me. And I got to be in an action movie. And I had always wanted to be in an action movie. So I think that's why I chose it. And then I kind of thought the idea was really interesting. I thought that idea that there is an open season one night out of every year, and that's what keeps us human, has been a thought that has gone through many different things. There's all these novels before I was born, but nevertheless that I've read from the 60s where they try to create the perfect utopia. And in almost all of them, they have to have some sort of war games because we all seem to like to have that tension in our lives, right? Even if we don't want to hurt anybody. So I thought that was really interesting. And I remember doing it. And it's really kind of thrilling. My mom, who doesn't watch anything horror, has seen it like 5 times. I feel like it's different than you think it's going to be if you don't know the genre. Like it was really fun to play because a good person in extraordinary circumstances. And then the action itself is fun, creeping around with the cutie. Like that was great. And then the idea behind it was also so interesting. The dark side of then what happens if we're allowed to fully express it to the nth degree. So I thought it was fascinating
Yeah, I find
and fun.
Purge in particular, I think is one of the most fascinating in terms it's hard to
Yeah.
under horror because I understand why, because of what you're seeing.
Yeah.
But to me, I
Yeah.
identified it a little more, I think like you, like a thriller because it brings up so
Yeah.
much topical things. And you might on the say, okay, well, there's this one day. Would that work? Would that not work? I mean, you could talk about that, but then you might start going into, yeah, but and just like you said, with utopian
Yeah.
societies, they've had like war games, Hunger Games, like when look at all those movies, be something that
Absolutely.
is not pleasant, but that is what makes
Yeah.
everybody else pleasant. So do you take that sacrifice? So it's much deeper
That's it.
than it comes off.
Yes, we thrive on what would I do, right? What would I do in extraordinary circumstances? We thrive on that as humans. Well, I would have saved her. Well, I would have, that kind of a thing. We don't know what we're capable of. And I think that the movies that bring that to light are something that we like because there's part of us that's like, what would I do in an emergency situation. Like, what
Yeah.
would I do, to stay? What would I do? Because me, I'm always like, well, I would just pull up and I would, blah, 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 blah. And I would buy all the things. But it's really interesting.
So I want to
Really,
get
really.
to Outer Banks.
Outer Banks. Oh, Carla Limbrey.
I just love her though. Like the way that you play her, the way that you play her kind of like disability, if you will. I hate using that term, but like the way you play her
Yeah.
with all the different fractions that she has. And the fact that in this season, when we see her, she's with
Yeah.
Bumpy's dad.
I know. It's
I'm like,
so
like
cool.
my
And
mind was blown.
I know, and he's such joy. Like, I love working with. But we do get to see him, which I think we saw at the end of the last season, which is great,
Mhm.
right? But I feel like that was such a surprise and so it may be that it's a spoiler. And I felt like he's just such a gift, and that was such a surprise. And I love her. I mean, she is a piece of work. She is an entitled old rich lady, and she probably was much worse, but thought she was better. I think she was socially acceptable, but probably even worse of a person. I think that she has started to have some vulnerability in her life because of her disease, and I'm fascinated by her. My big thing with her was, how do I find sympathy for her? Because I do find really, really entitled, wealthy people to be hard for me. I watch it and I'm like, I don't want to be any part of this. This makes
Right.
me so uncomfortable. I don't like the thought of it. I don't like the world. I don't want to be included. Thank you. But then to find her humanity and to find what are the icky soft parts of Limbrey were the thing I had to do in order to play her. And that was really my biggest struggle with her. The rest was just fun because like the Pate brothers are amazing, and all those actors are just adorable and kind and funny and lovely. And so the doing of it was fantastic. But yeah, she was a struggle for me, but she's fun this season. I think you got to see it, right?
Gosh, she's so fun this season. And I want to mention
Yeah.
one scene in particular
Yeah,
in the
perfect.
church
Yeah.
when we kind of come back. I want to ask you what that meant to you because she is so complex and she has
Yeah.
like entitlement and she has all these like issues, right? And I think
Yeah.
the trust level has gone up and down as we've met her. But when she's
Yeah.
in that church with John B's dad and John B's
Yeah.
dad's going, we used to have a call and I used to ring the bell and blah, blah, and he's doing
Yeah.
hours and hours. And that's such a beautiful dad thing to do, like to really try to
Yeah.
him. He's doing it and he wants to give up. And he comes downstairs to
Yeah.
you and he says, this isn't working. And she turns and she said, like, I'm paraphrasing, but it was like, if you want to have a
Yeah.
miracle, you have to believe in a miracle. And
Yeah.
kind of sends him back up and a miracle
Yes.
does happen. That whole scene was
So
so
beautiful.
beautiful. Yeah. So like
Yeah.
monologue, like you basically instill a miracle in that episode.
Yeah, I think that's what she believes. And I think that there's good parts of her, right? Like there's good parts of her that are like all of us that are touched by family, by close, whatever it is. And I think we're all capable of being extraordinarily wise and kind. It's just sometimes we have to be surprised into it. And I think that was one of those moments where the wisdom and her essential truth is that's her whole life, right? She firmly believes if she can get her hands on what she needs to get her hands on, that she will be healed. And that's what she wants more than anything in the world. I mean, the fact that she thinks she's more important than everybody else is an issue. But I do think that essential longing, by saying what she does, she's sharing such a true part of herself with him, which is easy to do because, Charlie's so fabulous. But I did think that was so fascinating that she's the one who kind of keeps it going. Like a
Yeah.
little fairy godmother, only like out of like the purge.
It's a nice mix between the two, I guess. But yeah, like that scene, like I got like a little choked up. I'm not gonna lie, like when she said that, and then things happened. But it was just so beautiful that she just didn't give up the faith for some reason in that moment, and she came through.
Sometimes you feel like the world just talks through you. Sometimes you'll say something to somebody and years later they'll be like, do you remember when you said this? And I'm like, absolutely no memory of that. So I think those are the magic times, aren't they? Those times where you get the wisdom that you need and it doesn't really matter where it came from.
What are you excited about for Outer Banks in terms of coming back?
Oh, it's
Because
so
we miss
good.
the
The
kids,
kids
we
are
miss
so good.
everybody.
Yeah, the kids are so good. I mean, the beautiful, young, amazingly talented people are so good. I think the Pate brothers are so spectacular in their directing and their creating, and the scripts were spectacular. The show's so good. In my mind, they don't ever drop the ball, and I think that has to do with their enthusiasm and their talent. But when you are on set and watching them do their work, you've never seen so much joy and happiness. Everybody is playing. It's never a situation where people are like, oh, we have to do. It's like, hey, what's the next setup? Let's grab this. Let's grab a light. Let's go do this. Okay, let's have another idea. Okay, what's your idea? Let's do it. So I feel like that's just gonna be our thing. We'll just keep doing Jonas's idea until we don't do it anymore.
I wanted to ask you about First Kill. I'm very excited about that.
Yes,
You're working with Emma Roberts. Is there anything
I
that you
had the
wanna, like,
best.
that you could, like, kinda talk about that?
It was
I'm excited.
amazing. I'm not surprised that it didn't get picked up because I feel like sometimes these shows come together and they're just meant to be this one big long movie. But I've always wanted to play the Empire. And then I'm off to go do the Santa Clauses again and I leave Monday.
I'm
I
so
mean, I
excited
didn't
about
think that
that.
was going to be like another show, but what a joy. I can't believe it. It's like I get to pray for a living. It's so fun.
So you have the Santa Clauses, which you're coming back for. You were at
Yeah.
Sundance for Aliens, right? So Aliens
Okay,
Abducted
yeah, so
by
Aliens
Aliens.
abducted my parents, and now I'm feeling kind of left out, which is possibly the sweetest movie I've ever done.
I was in a theater at Sundance seeing it, but how was the response
Yeah.
for you at Sundance?
The response was great. People seemed to love it. I looked around the audience as you do when you're an actor, and people were crying and laughing and touched, and the sweet little movie that could, like the little engine that could. Like, didn't have any idea that it was going to be somewhere like Sundance. It took 14 days. It's a teen movie, it's about these kids, but I think that sense of longing and being your own odd little person resonated, right, for everybody. I think it strikes a chord, and it's a sweet movie in the way of like an old Spielberg movie. Like you don't really see those anymore, right? Like it's such a
Yeah.
joy to see it. I loved it.
It's a beautiful movie, and I recommend
Beautiful
everybody
movie.
going anywhere you can to see it because
To
it was
see it, I
such a good
know it's
movie.
so good. Oh, it's so good. I loved it. I mean, you know the part I play in it, but I had a great time.
So really
Yeah.
quickly, I want to mention, so yes, so for Santa Clauses, you're coming back, and
Yep.
then you're in, I think it's in Post that I read, Possum Trot
Oh
is
yeah, Possum
another.
Trot. So the most
Is there anything
incredible story.
about it?
So I play a social worker in the 90s in this incredible community called Possum Trot, which was responsible. These rural churches were responsible for adopting every child considered unadoptable out of the system to such a degree that there were no adoptions left in a 200-mile radius around this little town. They took in every kid they could and they did it forever, right? No give backs. They took these kids into their families, into their community, and they did so, with love, with compassion, and it's such a beautiful story. It really is extraordinary. I mean, I'm a small part of it, but it is just such a joy, and we got to meet the real people. It's based on a real story, and I was about to go on vacation when they sent the script, and like, I'm getting on the plane because I have a feeling the minute I read this, I'm going to want to do it. So I got on the plane and I read the script and I flew out about 5 days after.
So that's so
Yeah.
exciting. So that's coming out, I would assume sometime probably next year.
Probably so. We still have a few shots left to pick up. So I think that we are, yes, in post production, but we're also still, we're not. But it is really good. What we've done is really good. I think we probably have a day of shooting.
I would literally break down every single thing because you've done so many things.
Oh,
I mean,
such a
literally,
joy to talk to you.
I wrote down notes, and then I started laughing. So I was like, I've seen all these, but like just really quickly, Queen
Yeah.
Bees, What We Found. We talked about The Purge, Santa Claus,
Yep.
which is coming back, Running Scared, Hollywood
Yeah.
Palms. You were in
Yeah.
First Kill, FBI International, Outer Banks, Enterprise, The Expanse, The Good Doctor, Christmas Club, Blind Spot, Dead of Summer. So I mean, you are just in every major show known to man and you're good in all of them. So I want to ask
Oh,
you kind of what fuels you from project to project and
oh,
what
that's great.
kind of keeps you going because you're like nonstop and it's always good. It's always good because some people are nonstop and I'm not gonna lie, they're not always good. Like sometimes it's not good.
I
You're
think I
always
think we
good.
all have our moments of thank you. I genuinely believe life is about the love of it. I think our brains do the very best work they can when they're in love with something. We are the best people we can be when we love someone. We remember things about people. We cherish it, and I love what I do. I love it. I love it like it's the first time doing it. I am always intrigued. Getting a script, I hold it to my face. Like I am in dorky, full on love with what I do. And I think that's it for me. I'm a really quiet person. When I am not doing that, I'm home, and I am home. Like I am not a social butterfly. I'm not out and about. I don't want to see and be seen. I have no FOMO, my own simple little self. So I think for me, it's pure passion and love. And I'm always excited to be scared, to be excited, be attracted, to fall in love with these characters and see who they fall in love with and see what they want and see how they're going to get it. I think this is our one and only precious human life. But as an actor, I get to be so many different people. And it's, God, such a gift. And I love, the cameras roll, you look into another actor's eyes and it goes by him. And my little inner child is delighted, jumping up and down and clapping no matter what I'm doing. So that's how I feel.
It's amazing. And while you were talking to, and I don't know if you realized it,
Mhm.
but like subconsciously, a lot of the decisions, it sounds like, were related to your son, which I love. And a lot of the stuff that you chose, you were like, well,
Yeah.
I was with my son, or your memories are tied to him. I love all of that, and that you were able to experience that together.
He's so not a Hollywood dude. He wants to be a doctor. And anytime I can be around him, it's my favorite time. He's great. He's hilarious. He's completely his own person.
You're so amazing. I just would want to hang out with you every day, all day.
Oh my gosh, I've loved talking to you. I really have. I've
Oh my
loved it.
gosh,
You
I
are
think you're
so
amazing.
kind. And you ask such wonderful questions.
Thank you so much.
I loved it.
I have one final one for
Do
you.
it.
You are just a joy. I mean, you are such a
Thank
beautiful
you.
person. It's like radiating off my screen. But like when you come on, you're just like, you just light up. And it's exactly what you do on camera, but it's different when you're you, if that makes sense. It's just more. You're just such a beautiful human. So it's so
Thank
great to
you.
speak with you. But kind of want to end with if there was any good advice that you've received over the years, because you've done so many things. And then
I really
also
have.
for fans, you have a lot because you've been, like I said, you've been on huge shows.
I
You
love
take
my
it in.
fans. I have the kindest fans in the world.
I mean, like literally love you. So I wanted to know kind of if there was any good advice that you received. And then is there anything that you want to say to fans that have kind of traveled over the years and followed you from project to project?
I kid you not, the greatest fans in the world who have really lifted me up during times when I'm like, well, maybe that's it, right? Like maybe I'm middle aged and that's it. I'm not going to be working anymore. And I've loved it. I'm so grateful for what I have had. And every single time I do something, it's like this wave of just extraordinary people coming to give me this love and kindness and appreciation and intelligent, detailed insight into the work that I do. And that's always like, it's just been such a huge part of it. Joining Instagram was super fun because I got to talk to people personally, but even doing shows, people coming to see them and talking to me. And as far as advice, just love it. And I'm a big believer in on-set etiquette, in that etiquette's a terrible word to use, but there is a reverence for what we do. And I love the idea of honoring where you are and doing the work and having your homework be something that is so tightly under your belt that nobody can sway you. And then just love and respect and play. Remember that it's a situation that nobody ever really gets to do in a full way, and just play. You are the only you, right? The only you. Don't try to be anybody else, because first of all, you'll just be a copy. You'll be like a ghost of somebody else. And it is so extraordinary to watch people find their way to their authentic selves and then give us that gift. And that's my biggest advice, especially for young women, where we're given so many ideals that we're supposed to live up to, and none of them are attainable. Not one. I promise you. So you just live, you be, respect yourself, respect others, be kind, love the work, and enjoy every minute.
Hope you guys enjoyed listening to Elizabeth Mitchell talk about her career and, of course, the upcoming season of Outer Banks. The show will premiere February 23rd on Netflix, so make sure you go and check it out. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you're updated on all of our latest podcasts, and head over to our YouTube channel, hit subscribe so you're updated on all of our video content.